Good morning, everyone. It is December 12th, the regular Clearwater County Council meeting. I will read the disclaimer. All public meetings are live streamed and recorded. Any written or verbal information provided will be included in public documents as per the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, FOIP 41. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order at 9:01. We have an agenda before us. Any additions? If not, looking for a motion to accept. Councillor Lougheed makes the motion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Looking at the looking at the regular meeting from November 28th, any errors or omissions? If not, motion, Councillor Cermak, motion to adopt the regular meeting minutes from November 28th. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'm just going to give a warning to council right now that we might move item 6.1 in between 5.1 and 5.2 today, just because Ag Services has a meeting that they have to commit to. So we'll just bump that up at that point in time. So, all right. I will now call the public meeting to order at 9:02. I'll outline the process. Everyone present shall register. All persons wishing to speak shall be recognized by the chair. Every presenter, when told it's their turn, shall identify themselves and their organization, if any, and whether they are in favor of or opposed to the bylaw. If a presenter becomes repetitive, they may be limited by the chair. If a presenter or member of the audience becomes disrespectful, they may be asked to leave by the chair. No outside recording devices will be permitted. We ask that cell phones be turned off or put on silent mode. Breaks within the hearing will be called at the chairman's discretion. Firstly, the development officer will explain the background of the application. Then the applicant will be invited to outline the reasons for the application. At any time, council members have the opportunity to ask questions. Any submissions received from other agencies will then be read out. Then anyone who is present and whom is in favor of the application will be asked to submit his or her presentation. Following this, comments will be requested from anyone who is opposed to the application. The applicant will have the last word and thus respond to any issues previously raised. Before I turn it over staff, let's do a moment to do introductions, and I'll start on my left.
Good morning, Sydney Graham, Councillor for Division 2.
Good morning, Daryl Lougheed, Councillor, Division 3.
Welcome, Jenny Melhoff, Deputy Reeve and Councillor for Division 1.
Hello, Michelle Swanson, Division 7 Councillor in Reeve.
Good morning, Jordan Northcott, Division 4 Councillor.
Good morning, Neil Ratcliffe, Division 5.
Greetings, Brian Cermak, Division 6.
Good morning, Murray Hagan, Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Kim Gillen, Manager of Planning and Development.
Good morning, Rick Emmons, CEO.
Good morning, Tracy Haight, Legislative Services Coordinator.
My name is Bob Dornenball. I am the applicant on behalf of the property owner.
Thank you. To start off, Kim Gillen, the Manager of Planning and Development, will outline the background of the application, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Okay, so Bob, under a numbered company, has an accepted offer to purchase from Patrick and Carol Tellier, my apologies on the pronunciation, who currently hold title to Plan 8322789, Block 1, Lot 2, part of the Southeast 3035 of 8, containing 3.12 acres of land. The subject lands are currently designated, Highway Development District. The subject property is located within the Boundary Subdivision, 26 kilometers southwest of the village of Caroline. Mr. Dornenball has made application to redesignate the existing parcel from the Highway Development District to the Recreation Facility District. The existing parcel is developed with a small campground containing 21 campsites, with 17 of the sites being hooked up to water, sewer, and power. The other 4 sites have power, and the existing systems could accommodate the 4 sites tying into the water and sewer as well. The parcel also contains a 6-unit motel, house, and various ancillary buildings and tarp shelters. Access to the parcel is obtained from Boundary Boulevard, adjacent to the north property boundary. The applicant is proposing to amend the land use bylaw to allow them to operate the existing campground and motel rooms under longer-term stays and leases. This does not fit under the current land use district, which is meant for the traveling public. Surrounding land uses in the area are mainly residential, agricultural, and recreation facility. The attached package provides more detail on the proposed development, and the applicant is here to speak to it as well. So I've included a variety of policies related to tourism, campgrounds and recreational uses, and water and wastewater services, as questions about that came up previously. And we're just require them to meet provincial standards and regulations regarding those systems. And when we're considering redesignation, we look at impact on adjoining and nearby land uses, and a variety of other and site suitability. So the purpose of the recreation facility district is to accommodate and regulate the development of major intensive recreational buildings and uses, and a variety of listed uses, including a holiday trailer, recreation vehicle park or campground, residence for the manager, and other recreation structures. And then I've included the density portion, as that came up as well. Maximum number of campsites that may be provided for trailers and vehicle park are 20 sites per hectare or 8 sites per acre. And then the size of the sites as well. So planning considerations, the redesignation of the subject land is to allow for the change of use on the property from short-term stays in the motel and campground to longer-term stays and leases. The recreation vehicle sites have already been used in this way in recent years, but this type of use does not fit within the highway development district, in which the uses are intended for short-term stays and not as a destination. The actual campsites and current setup and use of the property will not be changing. Regional Fire, along with other agencies, that should have not been in there, sorry. They did receive or give an opportunity to provide comment, and we will hear those after. At the regular council meeting held on November 14th, council reviewed and gave first reading to Bylaw 1174-23. As required by legislation, notice of today's public hearing was advertised in the local newspapers, and comments were invited from adjacent landowners. Upon consideration of the representations made at the public hearing, council will consider whether or not to grant second and third readings. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for the development officer? Councillor Cermak.
Yes, that one statement that you made here, this does not fit under the current land use district, which is meant for the traveling public. Does that mean that Clearwater County Council has to change a land use district to make this applicable?
Yeah, that's why they're applying to change it, because, I mean, obviously having the campground and motel there fits under the highway development district, but the intent of that district is to serve the traveling public, so people kind of driving by, needing a place to stay for a short-term period of time, versus as a destination where they plan to go and camp there and be there for a longer period of time, which fits more under a recreation facility type district, and that's how they would like to operate the campground, so that's why they would like to change it, because they don't want to target the people that are just driving by. They want to be the destination place, or a place for people to intend to go to.
Follow up?
So do we have to make a motion to change this district or to change the land use bylaw?
Well, I mean, it's up to council if they ever approve it or not, but yes, you have to make a motion for the second and third reading to change it to meet the desires of how they would like to operate it. I mean, obviously council doesn't have to proceed with it if they don't want to, but yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the development officer? Seeing none, were there any comments received from referral agencies?
Yes. So TELUS has no objection, Blue Mountain Power has no objection to the file, and they just mentioned that they're a nonprofit distribution wire service provider for this area. Alberta Health Services, they have received and reviewed the application. At this time, they do not present any objection to the application, but offer the following for consideration. The subject lands are located approximately 740 meters from the banks of the Clearwater River and what appears to be low land. Subsequent development of the property should be reviewed to ensure it does not take place within the floodplain of the Clearwater River. A review of the development of the subject and surrounding lands should be conducted to ensure a nuisance as defined in the Public Health Act is not present. Specifically, mapping of the current developments and surrounding land uses should be done in order to ensure compliance with Section 15 as defined below, so setbacks for septic basically setbacks for septic from other services. And then it also says, nor shall you locate any of the aforementioned items within the stipulated distances of an existing well. Public Works Infrastructure has no objections. Clearwater Regional Fire has no concerns at this time. Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors offers the following comments. Pursuant to Section 618 of the MGA, the department expects the municipality will comply with applicable items related to provincial highways. Pursuant to Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act, the department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connections to the highway system. The proposed development falls within the permit area of the provincial highway as outlined in Section 4.1 of the Highways Development and Protection Regulation. Transportation and Economic Corridors will await the roadside development permit application for future development. Transportation and Economic Corridors has no objection to this proposed land use redesignation, as the proposed site is currently developed land with a motel and campground with access via the adjacent public road, and provided the applicants will continue the current use of the aforementioned lands. And the Municipal Planning Commission reviewed the application on November 15th. MPC recommends the council favorably consider granting second and third reading to Land Use Amendment Application 2523. And the MPC provided the following reasons: the use is existing and the density of sites per acre and water and wastewater for the sites will be addressed at the development permit stage. And that's everything.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll now ask the applicant if they would like to speak to the proposal and add any comments to support your request or respond to any comments.
I think Kim covered it. It will be the same use as it is currently.
Thank you. I will now invite any member of the public wishing to speak in favor of the application. Any member wishing to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. I will now ask the development officer to, were there any written submissions in favor of the request?
There were not.
Okay. I'll now ask any member of the public wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none. Were there any written submissions received?
No written submissions were received.
All right. Are there any final remarks before we close?
That's fine, thank you.
All right. So I'll now close the hearing at 9:13. No motions will be entertained at this time. Thank you. Now moving on to our agenda item 5.1, consideration of second and third readings. I'll now ask the development, Ms. Gillum to carry. Go ahead. That's okay.
Okay, so the purpose of bylaw 1174-23 is to amend Clearwater County's land use bylaw to redesignate 3.12 acres, being all the lands within 832-2789, block 1, lot 2, from highway development to recreation facility. And pending the outcome of the land use amendment, the applicant will proceed with the development of the parcel as proposed. And please refer to the documents that I just referenced from the public hearing item. So again, at the regular council meeting held on November 14th, council reviewed and gave first reading to bylaw 1174-23. And as required by legislation, today, a notice of today's public hearing was advertised. And upon consideration of the representations made at the public hearing, council will consider whether or not to grant second and third readings. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right, open up for discussion. Deputy Reeve Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. I actually will make a motion to grant second reading for bylaw 1174/23. I think it makes sense to change it from highway development to the RF district. It is fitting, and I understand that the MPC will have the opportunity to do the development permit to address wastewater, density, environmental setbacks, all of those things at that time, so we can ensure that those things are done then. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor for second reading. Call for discussion. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, this seems like a simple housekeeping issue of adjusting the land use to how it's actually being used. So, seems straightforward. I will support the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion before I call the question? I'll call the question. All those in favor of second reading? Those opposed? It's carried. All right, I'm looking for third reading. Counselor Graham.
I would make the motion for third reading.
Thank you. Any discussion on third reading? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of third reading? All those opposed? Carried. Thank you. So as mentioned earlier, we'll be moving through to 6.1, Ag and Community Services. And I will invite Director Martinson to lead this agenda item, please.
Thank you, Reeve, Swanson, and Council, and thank you to Reeve for accommodating my schedule this morning and bumping me up on the agenda. Much appreciate that. We have agenda item today relating to the agreements that the county has in order to provide service, recreation and community service within the community of Caroline and surrounding area. As it relates to the Kerplowning complex, the hub, the Southeast Rec Grounds, and associated facilities. I think council's aware of the history there, so I won't read the agenda item, but essentially those agreements are expiring as of January this year. And I think council, of course, and hopefully the community at large is aware that we are going through some discussions right now with the Village of Caroline and with our associated communities around the potential future amalgamation of the two municipal entities. And I think we can speak for, or certainly in discussions that we've had with the two other parties, that being the Village of Caroline and the Ag Society, the county's chosen group to operate on our behalf, have all discussed, in my opinion, and have agreed that deferring this agreement would make best sense to allow for the amalgamation discussions to happen, and potentially whatever outcome those discussions have will, one way or the other, will have an impact on this agreement. And so it seems more reasonable and fair to the community that we allow those discussions to happen first, and then update this agreement once those discussions have concluded. And so our recommendation today would be to extend the current agreement for roughly 2 years to allow for those amalgamation discussions, and approve or direct council directs the Reeve and administration to sign a new agreement that expires December 31st, 2025. And the new agreement would have no changes or amendments from the past agreement. So I think, that's basically the item in front of you, and I'll turn it back over to Reeve Swanson, but certainly would be happy to answer any questions if need be.
All right. Any questions or discussion from council in regards to this discussion item, or this agenda item, sorry. Councillor Cermak.
Thank you, Mr. Martinson. I believe that this is the way to go. I don't think we want to make any rash judgments right now about the Ag Society out there in Caroline until we know what's happening with the amalgamation. So if it takes a motion to move this forward, we accept the 2 years, I am willing to make that motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments? Deputy Reeve Melhoff?
Thank you, Reeve. No, I agree. My only addendum to that would be in the event that something changes in the amalgamation process, that we have the ability to bring this back. So if something happens and it changes, if we have 2 years is pretty quick, so I don't anticipate, like in the grand scheme of governments, 2 years is actually pretty fast. So I don't anticipate that happening, but if it does, do we have the ability to look at this?
CEO Emmons?
Thank you, Reeve Swanson, and Matt, of course, is here, so I don't want to step on his area, but I would respectfully suggest it's that consideration why administration recommended the 2 years, to keep it status quo. If anything happens with amalgamation, it's a short window to extend the current agreement to then renegotiate a brand new one. But it would keep it status quo for a 2-year window.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion or comments? Councillor Ratcliffe?
Thank you, Reeve. Yes, this seems to be the right thing to do, and because it's supported by area councillors, I will also support this motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I appreciate the fact that we're given this opportunity to at least have that, press that, it's not a pause button, but at least it allows good continuality of the agreement. So I will be supporting this agreement, supporting this motion as well. So Ryan Cermak, you made, Councillor Cermak, you made the motion? Okay, so the motion is on the table. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. All right. Pardon me? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Ms. Haight.
Thank you, Reeve Swanson. There is a second motion for that agreement item.
Okay. Looking at that. I'll ask. Deputy Reeve Malhoff?
Thank you, Reeve. I would make the motion that council endorses for signature the Caroline Community Complex Lease Extension Agreement and the Southeast Recreation Ground Service and Caroline Community Complex Service Extension Agreements. Ooh, it's a mouthful.
Yeah. Upon reading it, I didn't realize there was two separate. There was two separate, but thank you for that correction. That's all good. That's all good. All right, so the second motion is on the floor. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Excellent. So as we move along in the agenda, we are now moving on to item 5.2. It is the first reading of bylaw 117523. And I will turn the floor over to Mr. Dawson, please.
The applicants currently hold title to Northwest 2640 of 7 within Division 7 containing 156 acres. The subject land is located north of Rocky Mountain House, southeast of the Frisco Hall, and approximately half a mile north of Highway 12. The landowners have made application to redesignate 4.48 acres from the Agriculture District to the CRA District. Their proposed 4.48 acre CRA parcel is an existing yard site located in the southwest portion of the quarter section. It is complete with a residence and an attached garage. The applicants have indicated existing services include a water well, pump-out septic system, which will be replaced with a septic field system. Their proposal is flat open land. Access exists off Range Road 7-2 adjacent to the west property boundary. The municipal road comes to a dead end at the south boundary of the quarter section. The reason for the second parcel request is so the applicants can still reside on the land with no restrictions for their son as he is taking over the farm. The remaining 152 acres out of the quarter section will remain under its present designation being the A District. This land is a mix of flat hay and pasture land and lower wetland. There is an established yard site in the southeast portion of the quarter section, complete with services, a well and pump-out septic system, a residence, a barn, animal shelter, and various ancillary buildings. Access exists off Range Road 7-2. The applicants have indicated they still have NRCB approval in place for their hog operation. However, at this time, all animals on site are for their own personal use and enjoyment. There is also a residential parcel located in the very southwest corner of the quarter section. Surrounding land uses in the area are predominantly agriculture with some residential parcels. Pending the outcome of the land use amendment, the applicants would like to proceed with a subdivision application to create a separate title to the CRA parcel. Therefore, this land use amendment is in conjunction with subdivision number 213678. Did you have a chance to go through all the policy?
I believe so.
The proposed redesignation is to allow for the creation of a 4.48 acre residential parcel in the southwest portion. This would be the third title from the quarter section, which fully complies with the MDP and the land use bylaw. The proposal's location limits infringements on surrounding ag operations, being the corner of the quarter section adjoining an existing residential parcel. The size falls within the CRA requirements wherein existing structures meet all setback requirements. The services on site will be replaced to comply with safety codes in relation to the new property boundaries. Legal and physical access exists for both the proposed parcel and the balance of the quarter section. Alberta Transportation, NRCB, Ag Services, and Public Works, along with other agencies, will have an opportunity to comment on the proposal during the referral stage. Staff recommends that Council consider granting first reading to bylaw number 1175/23 and proceed to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I failed to start this off with some introductions because we have some new guests in the room, so I'm going to start. We'll just do a quick interruption here with introductions. Go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Sydney Graham, Counselor for Division 2.
Good morning, Darrell Lougheed, Division 3.
Welcome, Jenny Malhoff, Division 1, and Deputy Reeve.
Hello, Michelle Swanson, Division 7 in Reeve.
Good morning, Jordan Northcott, Division 4, Councillor.
Good morning, Neil Ratcliffe, Councillor for Division 5.
Welcome, Brian Cermak, Division Councillor for Division 6.
Good morning, Murray Hagan, Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Kim Gillum, Manager of Planning.
Good morning, Rick Emmons, CEO.
Good morning, Dawson Conley, Planning Intern.
Good morning, Albert van der Meer.
And Sjoukje van der Meer.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Council, we have application before us to go to first reading. Any discussion? Deputy Reeve Malhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. I would actually happily make the motion for first reading today and proceed to a public hearing. It is well within the 7 acres that would be otherwise allowable for an already developed yard site. The applicants have already taken the consideration that they need to change the septic in order to meet those acreage numbers. A pump out would not meet these numbers, so I very much appreciate that you guys are already taking those steps in order to accomplish that. And generational farming is super important, and the way that this is written shows that you're doing this so that your son can continue to stay and farm and stay in the agricultural business within our community. So I would make the motion for first reading and proceed to a public hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Cermak.
Yeah, I see that it says services on site will be replaced to comply with safety codes. I read it and I see that the septic has to be changed. What other services on site need to be replaced?
It's just the septic system.
So it's not service, is it?
It's service.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if there's more that had to be done. And who looks into it that it will be done or it is done before it's granted?
Ms. Gillum.
I can answer that question. As part of the subdivision application, it'll be a condition of their subdivision approval if they receive approval to get the system replaced, and they'll have to supply a signed certificate that it's been appropriately installed and replaced.
Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you. I have a question for the applicants. Will your son be building a new residence on this property as well?
He is having his residence already on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Northcott.
For the original intent for the first parcel out, I think that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but to accommodate family members to be able to stay on the property, whether it's parents or children for the first parcel out. I was just curious, when was the first parcel subdivided? How long ago was that?
Parcel in 2001, and that was already out when we bought the quarter.
Okay.
So it has been before 2001, but
Okay.
I'm not sure how long before.
Thanks, that's.
1980. I believe in 1980 it was taken out, looks like.
All right, okay. Any subsequent? No? Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe?
I just want to say that I will support the motion for first reading.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Graham?
I concur. I will be supporting the motion as well. I think Deputy Reeve Melhoff put it very well, so I would just echo what she said.
All right. Councillor Northcott?
Yeah, I'll support it to go to public hearing.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree with how the plan has been outlined and how the applicant has taken into consideration the upgrade of the sewer system, so I think that it's appropriate. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor for first reading? Carried. Thank you so much. So we'll proceed to a public hearing at a later date. Thank you. All right, moving right along, we are at item 7.1, procedure bylaw consideration, 1177/23, consideration of first reading. Now, I believe we'll go across to Ms. Haight.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. So this is a draft revised bylaw for council procedures. Municipal legislation allows council to establish procedures to govern business conducted by council, council committees of the whole, and other committees, boards, or agencies established by council. A recommended practice is for council to review the bylaw at least once per term. General guidelines and best practices for what the bylaw should cover are found in the procedure bylaw and agenda guide from Municipal Affairs. So with this item, there's 3 attachments. The first is the bylaw as it is now, the current bylaw 1080. That was presented to council during orientation session back in October of 2021, and then reviewed in a council workshop in November of 2023. So the next attachment is the revised bylaw based on council's suggested amendments resulting from the workshop. Proposed changes have been highlighted in red. Items that are intended to be removed have been struck through, and sections of the bylaw that have moved to a different area in the bylaw are highlighted in green. So the last attachment is the draft bylaw 1177 for council's consideration of first reading. Did council wish me to go through some of the revisions?
I think it would be appropriate.
Okay. So if you could, yes, please. Yeah. So most of the changes that were made were for ease of reading, to provide clarity and to bring the bylaw up to date regarding legislative changes. So most notable changes are the addition of a table of contents, and that was just for easy use by the reader. The name change. The bylaw was originally called the Meetings Procedure Bylaw, but that's been changed to just procedures, as this bylaw covers not just procedures for meetings, but it also covers certain topics such as administrative inquiries, hearings, and public engagement with council. So as you can see, the wording has been just updated, modernized, using plain language throughout the bylaw. There has been a couple of definitions added, and that's just for clarity and for context. So if we go to section 6.1, these titles were clarified as that legislation allows for 2 titles of councillors, one for councillor and the other is for the chief elected official, unless council authorizes otherwise. So that section includes then a title for the deputy reeve. In section 6.9, as per council's request, there's been a section added for ex officio office, and that's an additional item. We then have some wording changes in 6.15 and 6.16, and that's regarding cell phone usage. We then have deletion of section 8.0, commencements of meetings and hearings. These items are covered in other sections of the revised bylaw under duties and quorum items. We then have an addition of section 9, and that is due to legislative changes resulting from the COVID pandemic, allowing for electronic meetings of council, and that's found in the MGA section 199. Another notable change is in the agenda delivery, and that's in section 11.2. That's been changed from the Wednesday prior to the council meeting to Thursday. We then have a change to the order of business, and that's listed in Schedule A, and the order of business is the agenda. There's been 2 sections, one added for new business and one added for old business. And that is a result of following Robert's Rules of Order, that meetings may carry forward to another time, another date, but that does not require a new agenda. If a meeting is carried over because it's ran out of time, the business would then be reclassified. Whatever wasn't covered in that first meeting date, the business that was unfinished then goes into the section for unfinished business. And the meeting can reconvene at whatever time or date is suitable.
Question? Deputy Reeve Melham?
Thank you, Reeve. Does that then ensure that we're still meeting the legislative requirements for things like development permits, subdivisions, et cetera? Like, I want to make sure that we don't push things into unfinished business, that you actually have legislative dates required to hit in order to achieve them.
Exactly. If there was deadlines required, council would need to finish that business. And you'll see that there's a section in the new order of business for bylaws. So that is a priority item on the order of business. And it's most likely that those will be completed in a timely manner.
Thank you.
So in the past, like when an item, and I'm going back years before pre-COVID, there would be an item in the back of the agenda item that says an item that has been tabled or that always was on our agenda because it was just more of a reminder. So this is where that would go now?
Exactly.
Okay.
An item wouldn't be tabled simply because council ran out of time. An item that an item may be postponed to a later date, usually for a good reason. This category for unfinished business is strictly for a meeting that's been scheduled to end at 4:30 and it's 8 o'clock at night and everybody's tired. That meeting then gets adjourned and then it reconvenes at the date and time picked, and that business that didn't get completed then carries over to the next day.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Okay, so now, under Schedule B, and this is connected to, I believe, Section 14. In the bylaw, Section 14 is written descriptions regarding motions, when they're used, how they're used, etc. This schedule is just, for ease of use, a chart that again lists the motion, and again how it's used, and some verbiage there for making a motion. Another notable change is in Notice of Motion, Section 15. This is a whole new process that Council should review to set some parameters around a notice of motion, purpose of a notice, how it's made, basically what to do. So the first section, 15.1, a notice of motion cannot be made at a special meeting. And that's as per legislation in the MGA. If a special meeting of council is called, there is a set agenda. And by legislation, nothing may be added or deleted from that agenda except what's been set. If a notice of motion were to be made, that would mean that something would have been added to the agenda. Section 15.2, so if a member wishes to move a motion at a future regular meeting, the member must deliver their notice of motion in written and electronic format to the Legislative Services Coordinator, copying the Reeve and the CAO, at least 1 week prior to the council meeting where it shall be introduced. The member must stipulate the date of the regular meeting at which the council member intends to move the motion. If a date is not stipulated when the notice of motion is delivered, the motion shall be placed on the next regular council meeting agenda immediately following the meeting where it was introduced. The Legislative Services Coordinator shall add the notice of motion to the agenda under Notices of Motions. The members shall introduce their notice at the meeting for future council debate and consideration by stating the motion and the date of the meeting which the member intends to move the motion. The recording secretary shall record it in the meeting minutes and place it on the subsequent meeting agenda as new business. Members shall not be allowed to provide any introductory remarks when introducing their notice of motion. And again, these guidelines, these directions are from the Roberts Rules of Order. A notice of motion is not debatable until the motion has been moved at the subsequent meeting. Members shall not be permitted to ask clarifying questions when the notice of motion is introduced. Notices of motion shall be referred to staff where there are policy implications, statutory requirements, a financial or budgetary impact, staff resource requirements, or where council would like to consider alternative options at the same time. Notices of motion may be amended for any reason. Notices of motion may be withdrawn at any time prior to the subsequent meeting date where it will be debated and voted on by council. Any questions so far? So the next section,
Counselor Ratcliffe?
okay.
Yes, is this that these motions go to the Legislative Services Coordinator? Shouldn't that be the CAO?
A copy is sent to the Reeve and to the CAO.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's 3 people that received that notice of
Oh,
motion.
yeah. Okay.
The Legislative Services Coordinator would receive that just to make sure that if there's any legislation that's applicable to that motion, then the appropriate sections can be applied. It's just a point of for review.
Deputy Reeve Melhoff?
Thank you, Reeve. Sorry, this sparks a question for me now. I thought we were always taught that we send things to the CAO and CC anybody else, not the other way around, because the CAO is, when you look at the triangle that we're always taught, it's we send things through the CAO, and our CAO has been gracious enough to allow us to CC and or attach things to any of the directors in order to keep everybody apprised. But we've always been told that it's him and CC them, not them CC him. Would that not still apply here, and therefore it should go to the CAO CC the legislative coordinator?
Certainly, if council wishes to amend it to that
I'm not
way,
trying to be
sure,
nitpicky, I'm
that's-
just,
Yep, no, it was just for administrative ease, that's like, it's the Legislative Services Coordinator's responsibility to review as delegated by the CAO, so it was just for economical purposes, ease. But it can definitely be changed so that the notice of motion can be sent to the CAO, copying the Reeve and Legislative Services Coordinator.
I would be more comfortable with that, and
Okay.
I only say that because I know I've gotten in trouble for doing it the other way before.
All right.
Okay.
Is there any?
So the
continue on,
next section, 15.3, this describes what happens at the subsequent meeting when the notice of motion now becomes a motion that is up for debate and discussion. So, subject to the following conditions, the members shall provide a summary of the background information, identifying the topic, desired outcome, and how the motion aligns with council's strategic plan. And again, do you want me to replace Legislative Services Coordinator with CAO?
And CC the ledge coordinator, like still including the ledge.
Okay.
I think that it'd be I didn't wait for my mic or wait to be told. Look at me not following procedure here. I think that it would be appropriate for it to go to the CAO, CCing ledge and the Reeve since they were CC'd on the last one. Keep everybody in the loop.
Okay. At least 1 week prior to the meeting where council will debate and vote on the matter. The content shall include a subject heading, topic, an introduction with a brief outline, 500 words less, and the recommendation. Members shall use the council member motion template attached as Appendix C when providing the background summary. So there is a template that may be used. If the member who introduced the motion is absent at the meeting where the motion has been placed on the agenda, the motion shall automatically be postponed to the next regular council meeting where the member is present. Once the member has moved their motion, debate takes place and voting can occur. A member must stay within the 5-minute speech limit established under this bylaw when providing an introduction for their motion by way of a presentation and while speaking in debate. A member may make presentation using PowerPoint or other tools during their introductory remarks to provide visual elements prior to debating the motion, subject to the 5-minute time limit.
Councillor Ratcliffe?
In the 15.3C, that word member shall use the member motion template, that makes it mandatory?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to find Appendix C here.
Should be the very last page.
I'm trying to find it.
That would be page 111 of the agenda.
49 of 74 of that. Here we go.
Okay.
Anything further?
Found it.
Okay, perfect, sounds great. Councillor Northcott?
Thank you. It's in section 15.3, it says, member shall provide a summary of the background information identifying the topic, desired outcome, and how the motion aligns with council's strategic plan. So, strategic plan would have to be adopted by council, is that correct? What if there was a member, or a council member that was not in support of the strategic plan, and they didn't have a motion, like if their motion did then not align with the strategic plan that was adopted by council, what would happen with that member's notice of motion?
That would be up to council.
Would it just be, would that notice motion be void and not accepted, or?
No, section 15.3A, it just, the member shall provide a summary of the background information. That's all that's required. And then, in that summary, identify the topic, desired outcome, and how the motion aligns with council's strategic plan. It may not align, but that should be identified in the summary of the background information. Yeah.
So,
If it doesn't, if the notice of motion does not align with council's strategic plan, that does not necessarily mean that that motion will be defeated or that motion won't be accepted. It just means that it's outside of council's strategic plan. And then council could discuss reasons or, just carry on with talking about that motion.
thank you very much.
And I would also suggest that when it comes time to any council motions, if we do have members that it's not a unanimous vote, that those that vote oppose, it is, if the motion does carry, it is the will of council at that point in time that that motion is upheld, correct? Like anything, if it's a defeated motion, then it's defeated. But if it is a 5-2, a 6-1, a 4-3 vote, those that have opposed and it is carried, that motion is, the expectation of the council as per the MGA is that we support that motion.
Exactly. The other reason why the member may want to align their motion with the strategic plan is because our agenda report templates, they align, there's little checkboxes showing which area is applicable to that report, to that agenda item. So this is just a carryover to match the report template for the regular agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe?
Just wondering when any staff input would come into this motion.
Where what? I'm
Any
sorry?
input from staff would come into this motion.
I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Normally, we have some feedback, some input from staff on a motion.
Oh, okay, well, that comes under, there's a section here that, it goes in section 15.2. Section 15.2I, notices of motion shall be referred to staff where there are policy implications, statutory requirements, a financial or budgetary impact, staff resource requirements, or where council would like to consider alternative options at the same time. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so would that go to the person making the motion before they present, the person who made the notice of motion? How would they respond to input from staff in this motion, in this process?
The member would make that, or could refer that notice of motion to staff prior to bringing that motion to the next regular council meeting. If the member thinks that there would be items in that main motion that would be applicable for staff to review, the member could refer it to at that time when they make the notice. Or perhaps when the member makes the notice at the council meeting, perhaps maybe another member might suggest that that notice gets referred to staff. But they would do that when the member presented their notice of motion.
Okay, but the council member is expected to, present that information. Is the way I understand this. So the process doesn't seem clear
Okay.
to me.
So if I may ask, a notice of motion versus an administrative inquiry I'm wondering if you feel like a notice of motion is an ask of administration to bring back information, that may not be a notice of motion, that may be more of an administrative inquiry if you wanted staff or administration input into, and then a motion could, through an administrative inquiry, there could be a motion that comes from an administrative inquiry, could there not? Or would it come, I know we're gonna get to administrative inquiry soon, I hate reading ahead, but, so, the way my understanding of this is that the notice of motion is the member's motion that would like to bring forward, and it is their background, it's their opinion that will be presented to their fellow council members on this, and short of administration coming back with item I, right, which is those implications. I think that's where that's coming. It's not going to be like the agenda that we're presented, where administration is presenting us with the motion, with the agenda item. It's because this is our agenda, this is the members' motion or agenda item that they're bringing forward. Did I confuse you?
And the member is expected to do the research and bring this forward, so.
If they want that motion, want that motion to be entertained.
Yes, so, to me, there is a gap in the process.
Okay. You'll need to identify that gap. Councillor Graham.
Mine is on this topic as well. From the way I understood it when I read it, it's the same process. We just email ahead of time, but then the information that we're bringing forward is at the stage when we discuss it around here to decide if we continue moving forward with it, and then administration gathers the information and then it comes back. So for example, I don't remember the correct terminology, but like doing the loans for the green. Yeah, so like with that process, you brought the notice of motion forward, and then it came to council, and we decided if we wanted to gather like administration to gather information, and then it moved forward from that, so administration gathered the information, and then the information came to us, and then we made a decision. From my understanding, it's the same process, but you're just emailing ahead of time, and then it's being brought up at, like, you don't just bring it up at the meeting, you email ahead of time, and then it's brought up on the agenda. Is that the correct understanding of, or am I off?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's, yeah, and if, maybe we could, just run through like an example and then go through the process by way of an example. So, for example, say, I want to give notice of motion, that, every Friday, last Friday of the month, is a paid trip to Edmonton. That's my, and I'm giving, and I'm giving notice at, so what I'm going to do is I am going to take, like, write out what my motion is, what I think it should be, and I'm going to explain why I think that this is a good idea, and I'm going to apply it to this council's strategic plan. And if there's no connection between my proposed motion and council's strategic plan, well, then I'll say that doesn't connect. It's just what I want. And then I'm going to email that to the CAO, and I'm going to copy the Reeve and the Legislative Services Coordinator a week prior to the meeting where I'm going to announce my notice. Then, if we go through, I'm also going to put a date where I want to introduce my notice. Or, sorry, where I want to have that notice, or that notice become a motion to debate and discuss. Maybe it's 2 weeks down the road, maybe it's a month down the road, or maybe it's the next meeting. It just depends. Then, the next part, after I've announced, made my notice, then at the meeting, the next subsequent meeting, that is where my notice now becomes a motion. And I'm going to make that motion, and then council is going to debate and discuss it. Pros and cons. And then they're going to vote on it and either carry it or defeat it. Very good. Does that help?
Councillor Ratcliffe?
Then why wouldn't we make our notice of motion with this template from the start? And just submit it from the beginning?
Well, you can, like, you mean submit your notice?
Well, just fill out this form, complete this form, and that's the notice of motion.
Well, you need to give notice at a meeting,
Yes.
at a public meeting. You need to give notice. It's a formal action that you need to do. Just by sending in the motion, that doesn't meet the requirements of giving notice. You formally have to give notice at a regular council meeting, just like before. There's no change to that.
On this topic? Okay, Deputy Reeve Melhoff?
Thank you, Reeve. My thoughts then is that 15.2 subsection I should be moved into 15.3, because I think we're putting staff time and energy too far ahead in the process. Because if we don't agree on the motion, that will be at the subsequent meeting presented, then staff time has already been put in, and we've allocated resources and funding and all the things it takes you guys a lot of time to do some of those things, and it's a financial impact to do some of those things, and we haven't yet voted if council's gonna agree with going forward on the motion. So perhaps if we move 15.2 subsection I into 15.3, and if basically the private members bill that's being presented, if they use the administrative inquiries to actually get information to build their background for the initial notice of motion that will be sent in on the template, then we aren't putting staff time and energy too far ahead in the process. Does that? And I'm just using the private members bill as a way to understand this, because that's really what this sounds like, in my brain anyway. I could be wrong, but that's how it sounds.
Okay.
So that's my suggestion.
Okay, does,
I concur. Councillor Northcott?
Just, I might be reading this just slightly different, but in 15.2I, notices motions shall be referred to staff. Is this giving a heads up to staff of the notice of motion, or would that be assigning a workload to staff? And is 15.2I, is that just raising awareness of the notice of motion and the implications that could come just to make staff aware, or is 15.2I putting a task on staff? To me, it sort of looks like it could be just raising awareness to staff that, hey, you know, there could be policy implications. So there could be statutory requirements, financial or budgetary impacts, staff resource requirements. So I'm just wondering if 15.2I, if that's just raising awareness to administration, or if that's that paragraph is actually putting work on staff.
yeah. If we use the example that I gave, like, I'm giving notice that last Friday of the month is a paid trip to Edmonton. Now, that notice of motion should definitely be referred to administration, because it has legislative implications, employment labor standards legislation. It has budgetary implications. It also has policy implications, because if council were to approve something like that, well, then all the offices would have to be shut down, and our policy stipulates hours of operation. So using that example, that is something that has huge implications all across the board. So it should be referred to administration. And the reason why in 15.2I is a step ahead is because in order for council to make an informed decision, they need to have all of the information presented to them. If that motion to have a paid day off last Friday of the month, if that were to be passed without council fully understanding all of the implications and all of the costs, it could be disastrous.
Councillor Northcott?
No, to see that statement stay, I would be okay at this time. I think it just raises awareness to really let staff be aware of, hey, this is coming forward, and then you can start to gather information of the implications that it could bring, just like you just explained very well.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Ms. Serhan?
Yeah, I just have a question, and I just don't know if it's for council or Ms. Haight, but if the motion is an action motion, I guess I'm confused a little bit, like, would the motion always be a research motion? Like, would it always be to have staff come back? Or would there ever be a motion that would be directing staff to do something? And I just want to be clear, because before the motion is passed, staff isn't aware of how much, if council is in agreeance about the information, so hesitant probably to provide information on something that we don't really have direction on, and then, but if it's just a motion to say, we want to explore this, then that would be different. When I'm listening to the conversation, I can just see myself being confused about what the motion as far as whether it's directing staff to do something or just directing staff to research something.
Yes. Yeah. Counselor Graham?
I think that our confusion is we removed a step in this process, and that's the step where the person just brings forward, like the second meeting usually in the process, where we just discuss, we haven't received the information from administration, we just discuss what the notice of motion has brought forward. And if we were to add that back in here, then it would be the council decision to move forward, and then we could put the administrative time toward it. Cause like, I'm not gonna support going to Edmonton, I wanna go to Calgary. So it's, I think that we need to add that step back in here, and I'm not sure if is it in here? I don't think it is, because you bring it forward, you email, and then it's at the next meeting on the agenda, but you're not allowed to add any statements to it. You just present, like, I'm making a notice of motion of blah, 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 and then it's just the motion. It's not council decides, and then once that motion is made, it's decided. Am I interpreting that correct? Because I was the opposite before, but now with this discussion, it seems like we've removed a step, and that's where the confusion is coming from, because then the administrative time would be after step 2, I will say. That's what I'm getting from this conversation.
Yes.
Okay, so 15.2 is pretty much the same process as what council has done in the past. They give notice at a meeting. The only new thing that's been added to the bylaw is that they have to submit that notice in writing. In the past, a notice was given at later in the meeting when it comes to the agenda, and administration is not aware of the notice. Sometimes when the notice is given, it's for administration perhaps to do something, and it's already being done. So if that notice was submitted in writing prior to, administration can pass that information on. Like, oh yeah, that's coming up in the council meeting 2 months from now. And then there's no notice given. So nothing's really changed other than submitting the notice a week before the council member is going to give notice at the public meeting.
Go ahead, Councilor Graham.
So it's after that step. I fully agree with emailing it ahead of time. I think that could save a lot of time potentially, like for the example you just gave, but it was after that process. So it would, like, historically we would make a notice of motion at the meeting, and then it would come back to a subsequent meeting, and we would decide as a council if we supported that, and then administration would gather information, and then that's kind of when it would be the official motion, and we would decide if we were going ahead with it or not. So it was like supporting the staff time going toward it, almost. Does that make sense?
Yes, but it depends on what the motion is.
Okay.
Another example that we can use is when Councillor Ratcliffe made that, gave notice of motion for a clean energy program, like that, that bylaw for clean energy retrofits going on to the property taxes. So he gave that notice of motion. Then it came back to council with a staff report, like staff information, and that follows I in 15.2. And then council debated and discussed, and the motion was defeated. So this does not change anything.
Go ahead, Councilor Grant.
But there was a step in between that before the staff information was, am I making this up in my head? There was, okay, yeah, there's a step between that where there wasn't the staff information and we decided if we supported that going forward prior to the information, and then we received the information.
If the motion was to direct administration to provide information. If the motion is made to pass a bylaw, that's a little different than a motion to direct administration to do something or request administration to provide something. It's all in how the motion is worded.
Okay.
And most likely, motions that have been passed as a result of a notice that was given had the wording in there that it directs administration to bring back information, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Deputy
Okay,
Reeve Melhoff?
Thank you.
Thank you, Reeve. I was digging further into this than I should have. And I thought these were two separate steps. There's like 3 steps in these 2 headings. And as you've been explaining it, E, the member shall introduce their notice of motion for future council debate. That's the piece that we were missing in our head. It goes back then to the original way that we did it, except they're sending it ahead of time. So that clarifies it in my brain. 15.2E can actually stay, or I can stay in 15.2, because I actually thought it was 2 separate steps. It's actually 2 steps in 15.2 and a 3rd step in 15.3. Now that I'm reading again, and
Yes, yeah.
yeah, so I saw it as just 2 steps. It's really more than that. So it can actually stay in 15.2 now that I've dug into it further. So,
Okay.
thank you. And the clarification of this back and forth helped that as well.
Yeah.
I think that I'm good now.
Okay.
I do have one other question though. K, notice of motion may be amended for any reason. Can that be by anyone?
I'm sorry, notice of motion can be what?
15.2 subsection K, notice of motion may be amended for any reason. Can that be by any member of council? So for example, if the notice of motion being given is an action-based motion, but I would like it to be a information-based motion before we provide an action, can I amend the notice of motion at that step? Like when they give just provide that there will be a notice of motion, or do I have to wait to 15.3 when the motion is actually on the floor for me and ready to be debated? Then I can amend it before it's actually put on the floor in 15.3?
Yep. Notices of motion may be amended for any reason.
Okay.
By
Any
any
member.
counselor.
I didn't know, so I didn't think we actually could say a word about it until it was actually moved at a meeting, which would be in 15.3.
The counselor giving the notice cannot provide supporting arguments.
Okay.
They can't, when they give notice, that's all that they're doing. They can't, like I said, provide supporting arguments. They can't pitch their idea. They can't, they can't begin to try to sway other,
But I can amend it?
but it can be amended for any reason. But the person who is giving notice, they just give notice.
Yeah, but somebody else can amend my notice without me being able to,
Right.
even though it's not been moved. Okay.
It can be,
Okay.
they can be amended for any reason, and I think maybe that applies particularly to, like, if there's something missing, like a date or a time or a dollar amount, then that notice can be amended.
Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe?
I think this section could be revised to improve the clarity.
The motion is to go, the staff recommendation is to go to a public hearing, so I think having more time at that time will be an opportunity for council to have, public engagement in this particular bylaw as well at the same time, so there is an opportunity where it's not a one and done today. It is a go to first reading, correct, Ms. Hay?
Yes, but if I could just backtrack, because maybe I'm a little confused. Are you thinking that notices of motion may be amended for any reason by anybody?
Yes, go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Thank you, Reeve. That was my question. Like, can they
Okay.
be amended for any reason by anybody?
Okay,
So like,
so-
if Councillor Cermak does a notice of motion and like, it's not actually moved yet, so how
Yeah,
could I amend
no.
his notice? Because he hasn't actually moved it. So that was my point. Like, can any person change in 5.2 subsection K, can I amend his notice of motion?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry for not catching that,
Okay.
for being, no, it's the person who is giving the notice
They
may
can change
amend
it.
it for any reason.
Okay, because once it's moved,
It
I can make a
becomes-
motion to amend the
Yes,
motion.
that's
But
correct.
until it's moved, I was
Yeah.
like, how are we amending
No,
motions that aren't
no,
moved?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm sorry for the confusion. It's the person who is giving the notice that may amend it for any reason.
Yeah, because it's,
And
sorry.
also may withdraw it for any reason.
That
But
makes more
It's
sense.
the person that's giving the notice.
That makes more sense because
Yeah,
it's not
sorry.
actually moved yet, so there'd be no
No.
way for it to be officially amended by somebody else. So, perfect, thank you.
Sorry for the
thank you.
confusion.
No, I'm like,
Councillor Lougheed?
And I think that was, what I was gonna ask was clarified there. Following anything else, an amendment can actually be amended as well?
yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
But that's the limitation, an amendment to an amendment?
Yeah,
Okay. Can't go to an amendment to an amendment to
No.
an amendment. Can't use that as a procedural awkward state. And I would just maybe comment too that, just for the clarity of those watching this, it's the responsibility of CAO to set the agenda or create the agenda, and that's based on what we create as a work path in our strategic planning session. So it's something that's coming back. This is kind of disruptive to, the notice of motion is kind of disruptive to that process. So it's great we're putting some structure around the notice of motion so that we all learn how that can be used effectively in the decision-making process, and I do appreciate the discussion.
All right, have one more comment, then I think we're going to have a quick break, so Councillor Ratcliffe.
Okay, 15.2 then, at the beginning of 15.3, the notice of motion has only been submitted to the CAO, like to staff. It has not been circulated. Okay,
at the beginning of 15.3?
right, up to that point. It is
Okay,
between the
up
council.
to 15.3, that notice has been given to all of council and the CAO and the Legislative Services Coordinator. And like it was referred to, it's like 15.2 has 2 steps, and there's definitely amendments that can be made to really clarify that there's 2 steps in one in section 15.2. The first step is if you think you want to make a motion, the first step that you need to do is give notice. To give notice,
Administration.
yes. The first thing that you need to do is let administration know that you want to give notice. Then the second thing that's done is that you give council notice at a regular meeting.
Okay, so it would get on the agenda at the next meeting.
At the next meeting, or perhaps if you giving the notice, maybe you want to give notice in March, but you don't want it to be discussed until June. So when you give notice, that's when you would say, I want to make this motion at the June meeting.
Okay,
Or it can come back to the next regular scheduled meeting.
okay, so then it would be circulated to the rest of council in the agenda.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Under the notice of motion section on, I forget what item it is, Schedule A.
Number 10.
Number 11, notices of motion.
Okay, and so then, at that meeting, the person bringing forward the notice of motion needs to prepare this form.
Yes, to answer your question, yes. You have to give your notice in writing, and you can use that template.
I must use that template.
You can use that template that's on page 111 to give your notice. And you can also, like, when you make your motion, you can also use this template so that you're not writing it out twice.
Okay, but I can't present any arguments when I make the notice. And this would be the arguments.
That is correct. So you would just fill out the top part.
I may be cursed with a logical mind.
No, that's fine, that's fine. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break, just so that we can have a breath of fresh air here, fill up our coffees again, and then come back to this discussion. So we'll break till, let's go 10:40, please. and welcome back. We have been on agenda item 7.1, procedural bylaw, consideration for first reading. And we needed a break to refresh our coffee cups and take a step back from this. So I will turn it back to Ms. Haight, and we'll carry on with the discussion. And I would just say we'll probably limit discussion at some point to carry on with the motion that staff recommended. Go ahead.
Thank you. So what I've heard is that definitely need to maybe simplify some of the wording in section 15. And for example, section 15.2 can be divided into two steps. The first step is that the council member will provide in writing notice of motion to administration and to the Reeve. And perhaps maybe there could be a template, because the template that's attached to this bylaw is when that notice becomes a motion and it includes all of the background information. But perhaps we can add another template just for the notice. And then once administration receives that notice, it really helps to go through it and perhaps work with the member that is wanting to give this notice to make sure that everything's very clear and that the intent is what they want. And also, administration may make some suggestions regarding impacts to council's budget or council's strategic plan. It's just so that administration can help that member just pull everything together. And like I had said, perhaps a member gives notice of a motion, but yet administration is already working on it. And so they can, clarify that. So section 15.2 then will become step 1, step 2. And step 3 would be the Schedule C, that the template for the council member to provide their background information and to provide information to support their motion that they will be making at the next meeting. Does that help clarify things, simplify it a bit?
Deputy Reeve Malhoff?
Absolutely, thank you, Reeve. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Perhaps a flow chart?
A flow, sure.
Like we can add in.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be nitpicky or whatever, but I know that this will stand for several years and will bridge between councils. And I want to just make sure that it's very clear for future council and future administration when they are doing this process. So perhaps a flow chart would be handy as well.
Yeah. And if I may just add, Ms. Serhan was also asking a question. That is the intent of the step 1, step 2 process. So that if it does require any kind of administrative work, it can be identified right away. If that helps clarify too.
And I will just add my comment in regards to notice of motion, and that is, to me, that is something that's imminent. That's something that hasn't been discussed through our strategic planning throughout the year. That it's a one-off that doesn't necessarily have to, that may be coming to council that maybe hasn't been recognized. We don't know what's coming down the pipe, maybe from the province or the feds, that we need to deal with at that particular point in time. So this isn't just something that, as a councilor, I want this done, and I want steel-plated, or I want gold-plated bridges now. Like, it's not anything like that. It has to be something that is, to me, outside of our strategic planning days, which we get multiple times a year to be able to have those discussions at that particular point in time. So And it's nice to outline the process and have that, you know, for clarity, like Deputy Reeve Malhoff has suggested, it's for future councils as well. Go ahead, Councillor Lockley.
Yeah, and just a comment, kind of sparked some thoughts, but definitely, just want to make it clear that I do not like the notice of motion provisions, but I understand the necessity for them. And I hope we never get to the point that we have a dysfunctional council or that we have a poor rapport with our administration. I think that's where, the notice of motion really comes into play there. If we're not able to use normal channels to be able to, or at least the channels of discussion to deal with emergent topics. Ultimately, I think we can do that through our strategic planning or our agendas and priorities, and dispense with the need for using this provision very often.
I agree. All right. Any further discussion in regards to this, or would you like to continue and
There
because we
is,
got hung up on a 15.
there is one more section in 15.4. There has to be allowances that a member may make a motion introducing an emergent matter of urgent public importance. So 15.4 allows for that necessity. So going on, the next notable change is in votes of council, section 16.4. It was noted, the way that it read before is that there was no possibility of a member changing their vote. So this has been clarified that before the chair declares the result of the vote, councillors may change their vote for any reason. After the chair declares the result of the vote, then there are certain steps. If the request change does not alter the vote result, the request may be granted by general consent or by a majority vote, whether the requester voted for or against the motion. If the requested change would alter the vote result, the member may move to reconsider the original vote.
Deputy Reeve Malhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. Is this before or after the hands are seen? Because
Before or after?
Yeah, so they can change their vote after all the hands have been seen, but the chair has not called has not actually announced what the vote was, whether it was carried or defeated. Like, I don't want to turn around and have it be, oh well, I wanted it to carry anyway, but it'll look better politically if I vote against it. So now that it's carried, I'm going to show that I voted against it, and it won't change the vote, but it'll make me look like. I don't want that to happen. Like, so when are you actually allowed to do it? Is it before you can count all of the hands in the air, or after the hands have been put in the air and the chair has, may not have said carried or defeated, but we've all seen the hands in the air? Like, do you know what I'm getting at here?
I know what you mean, and I suppose, yes, a council member could use that to their personal advantage. That then becomes more of a behavior issue, I think. I would hope that this section is not used, and if it is used, it's because somebody in the moment got confused and, put up their hand at the wrong time. So there's allowances for both before and after. So before declaring the vote, whether it's carried or defeated, before the chair declares the vote, a councillor may change their vote. And then there's measures for after the chair declares the vote, and that would be after stating whether it was carried or defeated.
Any, Counselor Graham?
Now, I mean, like, this is just a reminder, this is council's bylaw. As long as you're following legislation, you can decide what it is that you want in this bylaw.
Counselor Graham?
I hadn't thought of it that way before. My mind doesn't work like that, I guess. But during our effective meetings EOEP course, he did say that a counselor always has a right to change their vote, especially to change it to no. So, and I don't know if that was according to Robert's rules or the MGA.
That's according to Robert's rule. There is nothing in legislation.
Okay, so it was recommended as best practice though. So if we want this as per best practice, then it should stay in there, I guess. But I hadn't looked at it that way, but I would support it staying in there personally.
Counselor Ratcliffe?
Just reading the proposed 15 or 16.5 here, I would think there should be some limit on the time to be able to make a change. Or, let's see, it's, a member may move to reconsider the original vote.
This section would just apply to the meeting at hand.
Within that
Right,
meeting.
at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Lougheed?
Thank you, and I really don't want to be devil's advocate here, but 16.5 actually has two components. One is somebody wanting to be considered by council to reconsider their vote. So that particular majority vote would then be subject to somebody changing their mind as well. Because it's basically saying any vote can be reconsidered. So once we start to get a sequence of votes, it's like the amendment to the amendment. It's like a reconsideration of a vote, having a reconsideration of that vote. It should only really come to play if there was that change of vote would change the decision. I think that, and that's when it should come to the majority of council reconsidering the ability for an individual to change their vote. If it's just to make a little flash in the pan to say that, you know what, I really don't like this, I'm gonna vote no, because I have no real consequence to me other than to say I'm against something. If it makes a difference, like if it's a 4-3 or it's 5-2 perhaps even, that's where I think that clause becomes more important, really. If it wouldn't have changed, if it wouldn't change the outcome, it wouldn't change the motion that was originally being decided, I don't think it needs to be a grandstand moment or have that provision, and that's, you know, the simplest way for me to view it anyway.
All right, Counselor Northcott?
Alrighty. There are, because motions are made in the positive, and sometimes there's things that come across the table that you're in total disagreement with, but you have to wait for that opportunity to vote in opposition, which does, you know, does offer a little bit of, for a second of confusion, right? Just to make sure that you get that vote right. So if you did get mixed up and you had that opportunity to say, oh man, I really made a mistake and I actually wanted to vote in opposition, or, you know, just the way the motions always have to come in a positive manner. Now, if you were gonna use it like Deputy Malhalf stated, you know, where you've seen the results of the vote and then you wanted to change, I think the thing that would hold members or councillors accountable at that time would be the personal, like the perception from the public. Like they do get to watch us, and it also the integrity of the individual to be able to change. So I think that's where that accountability will be held at. To change your vote for those reasons would be, absolutely not appropriate, but the public perception and integrity of the individual would be questioned, I think, by the public.
Yes, no? Okay.
I appreciate
Counselor
that, and I think I'm just gonna use an example. You know, from time to time, there's some complex issues before us. There's been a lot of discussion around those issues, even after the motion, and sometimes clarity isn't there. after the vote is called, from time to time, I think there might be the opportunity to say that, you know what, I made a mistake, I thought we were doing this. And you explain that to council, and then council, by majority vote, allows that motion to be reconsidered from what somebody has said. I think that needs to be there. I think that's what this allows for. I don't think it should be a tool that's used to come back to a motion, you know, at the end of the day. Well, let's see if anybody wants to reverse everything we've decided up to this point. I don't think we want to be at that level. I think it's meant for that honest mistake that I believe well-meaning counselors make from time to time. I might have been close to making a mistake once too, but I did not. But anyway, I'll just say that that's how I view 16.5.
Okay. Carrying on then, past 16.
Just a note, the only time that this does not apply is when it's a secret ballot. Okay, so the bylaw section, again, just changes to wording, just for clarity. Administrative inquiries, just tightening that up and making it more clear. There are not very many changes. The process is pretty straightforward. Communications to public engagement with council, that's again, pretty straightforward. Most of it left as is. There is an addition of 19.6 because of the legislative amendments for recall. And section for correspondence on what, how correspondence is handled. Just wording to, again, add clarity. And that is it. The cell phone section, there was some discussion during the workshop, and that wording has been changed in 6.15 and 6.16.
Great. Are there any other comments or discussions? Councillor Graham?
I was going to make a motion if everyone is comfortable with that. Councillor Radcliffe maybe wants to say something first.
Okay.
I have some questions from parts we didn't go over.
Okay, so, okay, go ahead, Councillor Radcliffe.
Okay, going back.
What page are you going way back?
This is page 88 of 184, section 4 or 7. I guess this is my logical mind here. For me, there is a conflict between the oath of office and the code of conduct. That the code of conduct requires councillors to support a motion that has been passed in council. But the code of conduct, or sorry, the oath of office requires that we act in the best interest of the entire county. And occasionally there is conflict between that, where a decision may not have been in the best interest of the entire county that has been made.
I'm confused. Can you explain a little more?
Okay, the code of conduct requires that all councillors support a motion that has been passed by council. Okay. The oath of office requires that we act in the best interest of the entire county. So if a motion passed by council is not in the best interest of the entire county, then that's where a conflict occurs, where the two of them are in conflict.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Hay.
Perhaps maybe I can just clarify a bit. The Oaths of Office Act is provincial legislation, and when the wording for the oath of office is that you will faithfully and diligently uphold and serve serve in the office as counselor. And then the MGA covers the duties of a counselor. It doesn't specifically mention, and maybe if I could have just Alana double check in the MGA under section 1.4. Sorry, 156. So they are different. The Code of Conduct bylaw covers conduct, and the oath of office covers the legislation applicable to holding your office as a counselor.
Which one takes precedence?
Legislation takes precedence. Code of Conduct is a municipal bylaw. The MGA requires that or allows for council to pass a Code of Conduct bylaw. But legislation is first. So it's not conflicting, it is tying together. And yes, another part of the legislation is that you cannot be a counselor until you take the oath of office.
Yes.
That's the first step to being a counselor, is taking the oath of office as per legislation.
Councillor Lougheed?
Thank you, Reeve, Swanson, and respectfully, if I could, maybe if Councillor Ratcliffe could just say what he said at the beginning before, I didn't quite piece it together to fully understand what you're saying there. Is it something along the line of once a motion or a resolution has been accepted by the majority of council, but that somehow would be in conflict with your duties as a counselor to respect that decision? Or I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, that it can in conflict with the oath of office.
I guess for myself, this has been outlined here at the inaugural meeting, right? About OS Act and then the Code of Conduct bylaw. And then as we proceed, we are no different position than any other elected official in this province. And that is the line we tread. Knowing what we are required to do, we are blessed with being a counselor, so we have to, that's where our Oaths of Office Act comes in. Here you are in your role for the next 4 years, but our Code of Conduct bylaw, if that's what we want to change, so be it. It has something in particular in that Code of Conduct bylaw. Maybe that's where we get the hang up, is in our code of, so maybe that would be something that you would like to identify that conflicts with the Oaths of Office Act, because I don't see any conflict, but maybe that's, as explained by Ms. Haight, those are two totally different entities. I don't see the overlap there at all. One's a blessing and one is, this is how you will conduct yourself. So clarity, Ms. Haight.
Yeah, that's they are two separate things, but they do go hand in hand. You cannot follow the Code of Conduct until you take the oath of office. One precludes the other, if that helps. But they don't conflict. it's, you need both. But you must, as a counselor, you must take the oath of office in order to pick up your duties as a counselor. I guess, I think that explains it. Like, the oath of office allows you to follow your duties as a counselor. The Code of Conduct bylaw explains how you're going to conduct your duties, how you're going to do what you're supposed to do. Does that help?
Councilor Ratcliffe?
I'm okay with the legislation taking precedence.
Okay, so you had any?
And other one?
Okay.
And that is page 96. Proceedings. In the absence from proceedings, the description of pecuniary interest is really incomplete. That, you know, the legislation goes on, it takes in sections 169 to 173. And just reading this part would give a, I think, distorted view of what the pecuniary interest really is.
I'm sorry, which part gives a distorted view?
Like 13.1, 13.2. 13.1 in particular. Because those sections go on to describe what pecuniary interest isn't as well. So I think that should be just more general and refer to the sections in the MGA.
With this question then, is this, Ms. Hay, is this a direct quote from the MGA then, under pecuniary interest? I'm just gonna. Okay. Alana, to double check, okay.
I remember correctly, it pretty much is.
Yeah.
A direct quote, okay.
It is pretty much, right from sections 169 to 173.
Okay, it has been a direct quote. Okay.
Yeah, it's 170.
All right, so, in this is, can I ask you to repeat what you'd like clarified here? Is this for clarity, or if this is for, as far as the MGA is concerned, Councilor Ratcliffe, or?
It's for clarity
Okay,
of the intent of the whole section around pecuniary interest. So, you know, we should either quote all of it or maybe have a general description and refer to the act.
Okay, so sections 13.1 and 13.2, and 13.3,
13.2 and 3 are okay for me.
so it's 13.1?
13.1.
Okay. The wording is generalized from the MGA, and the MGA sections are referenced in the bylaw for the more complete wording. And it is legislated regarding absence from proceedings related to pecuniary interest.
Yes.
Like it is legislated responsibility for the council member to, I guess, to declare a pecuniary interest. And this section provides direction on how to go about declaring pecuniary interest so that it is properly recorded in the minutes as per legislation.
Yes, my concern is more around the description of pecuniary interest.
The description of pecuniary interest, and that would be a matter could monetarily affect the member or an employer of the member, or that the member knows or should know that the matter could monetarily affect the member's family. And family is defined as per the Act as spouse, adult, interdependent partner, children, parents, and parents of a spouse, or an adult interdependent partner. So that is the section that,
Because there's much more definition of it through the rest of the Act.
So hence, that's why the MGA has been quoted at the top, so should there be a link then to such,
Well, and-
to that?
Okay, if we want to keep this, I think there should be a disclaimer or something saying that, you know, this is only part of the Act around pecuniary interest, and that people should refer to sections, whatever, of the MGA for a complete understanding.
and that is like the little bracket, like there's in brackets underneath the title, it has MGA sections 169 to 173 referenced in the bylaw.
Okay,
And there is a link to the act itself at the very beginning. It doesn't, it shows up in blue, so that anybody who looks at the bylaw, they can click on that blue line and it'll immediately take them to the MGA.
So what I'm hearing then from Councillor Ratcliffe is that it's either reference at all or just reference the act itself. Is that what you're asking? Or, and not have bits and pieces is what you're saying?
right, to make it clear that this is not the complete explanation.
Okay. So a disclaimer that there's other parts of the Pecuniary Interest Act in the MGA that has not been referenced, is what you're saying, right? Okay. That can come back for discussion on this item, so Councillor Graham?
I'm personally comfortable with how it's laid out. I think it like it's cited here, the pages that it's on, so it's, to me, it's kind of obvious that it's not, you know, this takes up more than, or less than the 4 pages that are cited there. I think that it's appropriate to have the definition of it, and people, if they want to see what is precluded from it, they can go to the pages that are written right here and see what is precluded. I don't agree with writing the entire thing on here, and I think it makes it a lot easier for people wanting to look at the definition, just to look at this page, and then if they want to look further into it, they can go to those pages. So I personally am fine with how it's laid out here.
Okay. Councillor Logan?
Yeah, I'm okay how it's laid out here, and I was just looking through those sections of the MGA. I don't know why they're so dog-eared on my book, but they're definitely here. I think it's important in this section for our meeting procedures that this kind of outlines those fairly clear-cut things where you can abstain from a vote. I think that's what's important in our meeting procedures here. The other part of it is much more difficult, as we may have some experience with defining that for another person. It's meant to be attestation of whether you believe you have a pecuniary interest in that matter and would abstain from that vote based on that. So anyway, that's enough of my soapbox.
Okay. Councillor Ratcliffe, or do you have any other comments to this? And then I'm going to limit discussion for so that way we can move on in our agenda.
Okay, I don't want to see all of those sections printed in here either. But I think to add one more line has very little impact and provides clarity to anyone going through it that there is more to the issue than just those simple sentences.
Okay, that's Deputy Reeve Melhoff?
Thanks, Reeve. I don't see a problem one way or the other of adding a line that says, for more information, please see page whatever it is, or part of, I don't see an issue one way or the other. My only worry would be, are we gonna do that for every piece of this where the MGA actually goes deeper into this? Or are we gonna add that little disclaimer in every piece of the document? Because there's many other sections of this that reference the MGA, that pieces of the MGA have been pulled from. So are we adding that disclaimer everywhere? But I am totally fine with adding it in if we need to.
All right. So we have the draft ahead of us. We've given some opportunities to do some changes for an upcoming public hearing. So if council chooses, so that's, sorry, first reading, sorry?
Yes, for no public hearing
No
required.
public hearing, it's if after the first reading,
Yeah,
correct?
no
Sorry.
public hearing required.
That's right. First reading.
For this type of bylaw.
That's right. Sorry, my apologies. All right, looking at, okay, Councillor Graham.
If everyone's questions answered? Ish?
Ish, yeah.
Okay, then I will climb out of the rabbit hole here and make the motion, looking for the wording of it, that council reviews, or that council grants first reading with amendments of the procedures bylaw 1177/23 for the purpose of establishing procedures to be followed by council committees of the whole, and council committees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Deputy Reeve Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. Can we confirm which amendments we made?
Sure.
Ms. Tate?
Or would that be better in
I
second,
believe-
have you bring it back with track changes? Would that be more
Sure.
efficient?
Whatever, I believe.
Because we still have an
really-
opportunity to go through this, so perhaps then I could just request that for the next review rendition that shows track changed with amendments.
Yeah, I really did only hear one amendment, and that was to section 15, notice of motions, to separate section 15.2 into two steps. Also add for clarity a possible flow chart, that's dependent. Changing in section A of 15.2, changing legislative services coordinator to the CAO, and copying the Reeve and legislative service coordinator, and also same type of wording in section 15.3. And that's all that I have.
Where did we land on 16.5?
16.5.
Did we land on only allowing that when it actually changes the vote, or are we
Yeah,
leaving?
I don't know where it landed.
Okay. I would suggest the amendment where it is only where it's actually going to be changing the vote, and therefore you have to go through the process for reconsideration of the original vote, rather than it be the beginning of 16.5, the way it's suggested there.
So now that step is in 16.5.
Yeah. There's two things in 16.5.
Right.
One where you can use it as potentially a political tool, where it doesn't actually affect the vote but could be very disruptive. and another where it actually changes the vote and you have to go through a process to actually have a vote reconsidered.
Right?
I absolutely understand where Councillor Northcott came from, where it might have just been a mistake, and there may be other opportunities, i.e. in a code of conduct or in a, crap, you mentioned something else, sorry, Councillor Northcott. I can't remember now, but, or the community will see it as an ethical or moral issue to be using it as a political toy or tool. But if we just remove it altogether, it cannot be used that way no matter what, and you can still go through the request to change or alter it through the process in the second part of 16.5.
So.
Am I confusing everybody, or am I confused, or?
So deleting the wording regarding the requested change does not alter the vote result?
Yeah, that we just don't even worry about this until such time that them changing their vote will actually alter the decision. I just don't see why there would be a reason to go through the process until it's actually gonna change the decision on the vote itself.
Well, to explain, I think there's both processes are included for transparency and also to provide two different mechanisms in the event that there are two different situations. So that's why 16.5 includes what to do if the vote result doesn't change, and what to do if it does change. It's covering both bases.
Discussion, I guess I'll ask Councillor Graham.
I don't know if this will help at all, but in the EOEP course, the example that was used for the situation was if, like, I'll use a playground for example, and say one counselor voted against it, but then going forward, they wanted it to be like, you know, all of council supports this, so it was kind of like the positive flip of what you're seeing. So I kind of like how it's laid out for that reason, because, you know, there are things that someone can change their mind after, but they, you know, they don't necessarily agree with it, but they want it to be unanimously supported by council. So it can kind of go both ways. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. I wouldn't just.
Councillor Cermak?
I'm on a different one if you guys
Oh,
want to
okay.
keep
Yep.
discussing
No.
this.
Okay. What I heard is that, I understand the example that you just presented, and again, it's, at the time, if, I'm gonna use your example of a playground, right? If the councillor voted against, they may have had a different, may not just be different information at the time and why they voted no. So I understand the positive flip, but I agree with Deputy Reeve Melhoff. I don't want it to be weaponized. I think this needs to be, you make up your mind, and at a certain point in time, you can have that opportunity to, we all are allowed to make our reasonings for our vote, and so therefore, at the time of the vote. So short of it being, like Deputy Reeve has mentioned, it is will alter that vote result. I think that's where it's gotta be. And if we're going to allow for that, I would like it to be in point form versus all in one paragraph. If we could put, if it's going to alter, not alter, and if it is going to alter, if we're going to keep it in. And if not, then take it out. That's just the way it's worded for me, is my issue.
So I could do that, make some revisions, and then for further discussion when it comes to.
Second reading?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that would be good. You bet. Councillor Cermak, you have other,
15.2K, notice a motion may be amended for any reason by the mover of the motion. I thought that's what we had decided upon. Only by the mover, not by anybody.
Okay.
Is that what we decided?
that's right.
Go on.
Councillor Ratcliffe?
I just wanted to ask the question if a motion to make the result of a vote unanimous Is that something that could be done?
I almost feel like we're getting too much into the weeds in this. So, yeah, so,
Yeah.
we can't outline every possibility in this, so we just have to do our best judgment in this at the time, and, I mean, I don't want this particular bylaw to be more than, it would be nice to have it down to 3 or 4 pages, but it's never gonna be there, so anyways. All right. With that, Ms. Haight, you have your direction as far as changes.
Okay,
So the
yep,
motion
thank
is
you.
on the floor for first reading with amendments, and it'll come back to us.
Okay.
So I will call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. So with that, moving on to, within the agenda, we are into the report section. So item 8.1 is the CAO report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Emmons, please.
Thank you, Reeve Swanson. So the CAO report for December 12th. Special council meeting will be held on December 19th for the purposes of council to give final review and consideration of approval for the 2024 budget. The meeting notice is attached. Clearwater County offices will be closed Monday, December 25th, and Tuesday, the 26th, and Monday, January 1st for stat holidays, and closed to the public from Wednesday, December 27th through to Friday, December 29th. Offices will resume regular hours on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Flood study engagement. Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas. Feedback is being collected from Albertans regarding draft reports and flood maps used for emergency response and to enhance community resilience. The maps highlighted potential flood zones during different flood sizes with a focus on high river flows, summer and spring rainstorms, ice jam floods, and historical flood events. In Alberta, numerous communities rely on outdated flood maps, prompting the largest flood mapping initiative in the province's history. This project aims to update existing maps, extending coverage to new areas encompassing over 1,600 kilometers of river and involving more than 60 municipalities and Indigenous communities.
Thank you so much. So any questions or in regards to the CEO report? Deputy Reeve Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. Although the doors will be closed, will there be an opportunity if residents have questions, concerns, can they make an appointment or something to that effect for them still to be able to access staff, should staff be available?
Correct. So the doors will be closed, but of course by appointment. We only do this at administrative level to allow everybody the same opportunity to book time off. Otherwise, certain individuals never can year after year. So yes, the doors would be locked, but by appointment, they could definitely phone in and we would make arrangements.
Absolutely, and I think it's great that the staff can use their time, and yet we still have the availability of the public to be able to come in and get their concerns met. Thank you.
Councillor Cermak.
Yeah, this flood study engagement, how much is that going to curtail our administration to do this on behalf of the county here to give the information out of what rivers and creeks that flood and stuff in our area? Is that going to capture a whole bunch of administration time to do this?
Thank you for the question, and I've been heavily engaged in this process for probably 3 years now, just because of my background, and it hasn't been that onerous. Personally, I think it's very advantageous for Clearwater County especially, because we've had no mapping, let alone outdated mapping. So the importance of having this identified, for the councillors that may remember the traditional Redford rule, planning never had any maps that identified a 1 in 100 year flood, which created a lot of challenges when it came to development. So I do think it's worth the time myself, for many different levels. and departments, both from an emergency services planning perspective. But it hasn't been that onerous so far.
Good.
And I've been fairly engaged with it.
Yeah, because we have some pretty major rivers that do flood, and we have pieces of personal property on those floodplains that probably shouldn't have been allowed if we had the proper mapping.
Absolutely, Councillor Cermak. And with Clearwater County, we're kind of unique because it's not just a regular flow, it's the hydrology that's attached to it. When we get a rain at the wrong time that mixes with the snow out in the mountains, it's 7 days. And you can pretty much set a clock. It's 7 days and it impacts our infrastructure here. And with the snow and the rain mix, the hydrology of that flow isn't a regular 1 in 100 year flood. For a short window, it's like a 1 in 200 year flood, and then it's gone. So we really have to design to accommodate that.
I think it's just great that you're into this study. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there's no further questions for the CEO, I'll look for a motion to approve or to accept the CEO report for information. Councillor Ratcliffe, or sorry, Councillor Graham. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to item 8.2, the Rocky Mountain House Airport report from November to November of 2023. There's no other, see the numbers have adjusted. It's nice that there was a presentation to the chamber and to the town and county in regards to the Alberta Air Tours that came through. So looks like a very nice placard. So looking forward to seeing that in person. So if someone would like to move the airport report, Councillor Ratcliffe, sorry. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Cermak has a question.
I would like to know, when is our next meeting with the town on the airport? When is it next meeting scheduled?
Yeah.
Or is there any scheduled?
CEO Emmons?
Thank you for the question. So as per the new airport agreement, it would be at the next ICC, the Rocky Clearwater ICC, and I don't believe that's scheduled at this time, but that's when it would take place.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Councillor Ratcliffe?
Were you meaning, Councillor Cermak, the next stakeholders meeting?
Yes, and the regular one that we have some input into.
Okay, so I think the next stakeholder one is March, every 6 months?
CEO Emmons?
I took the question as between us and the managing partner, sorry.
Okay,
So the motion on the floor to accept the Rocky Mountain House Airport report, November 2023. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to our councillor reports, verbal reports. I'll look at, let's start on my right, Councillor Graham. You can start.
So I had my drop-in session. It was a slow day, but I worked my way through more of the land use bylaw. I had the opportunity through the Rocky Learning Center to take a psychological first aid course. That was a very interesting course. It's just kind of how to help people who are going through, I should have brought the quote with me that was in the book, that would have been smart, but it's to help people who are going through like mental trauma, and you know, once you're certified with this, you can get calls from the Red Cross to go and help. Like if there were an emergency to happen somewhere, you can get calls to go assist with the psychological first aid of that. So it was a really interesting course, and I learned lots of great things in it. And it's also really nice to see it was one of the individuals who works at the Rocky Learning Center who presented it. So it's really nice to be able to see from the board perspective, to be able to see the people working and doing their things. So that was a really great experience. And then amalgamation, we were all there. It was, I feel there's not really a need to comment on that or budget. They're all on live stream, and I feel like there's not very many things on this list, but things have been very time consuming, so that concludes my council report.
Very good. Any questions for Councillor Graham? Go ahead.
Thank you, Reeve Swanson. Yeah, ultimately, I think many council members were involved with the work process over the last couple of weeks here, but so it's probably won't go into any details on that. It was great to be back on the Ag Services Board and get updated with the activities there. So good to see that so actively supported by people that want to see a better future for agriculture within our community. And I also want to commend staff on the communications effort with the amalgamation report. I think it's great to have that update. I've heard it on the radio. I've seen it in the printed form. And I think it's great to keep the community updated of the progress that's being made towards answering the questions around amalgamation with the village. And then also congratulations to council on going through what I believe is a successful work plan outlined by our budget over the next year, and excited to see that come to fruition over the next number of months. And that's probably my report for now.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Lockett? Moving on, Deputy Reeve Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. I was remiss in my last divisional report to thank the Condor community for putting on their Meet with Santa. It's an amazing event, and I really enjoy taking my family there, and I really appreciate FCSS for the support that they give that particular event, and I hope that they will continue to choose Clearwater County events when they look towards the allotment of the FCSS funding. The Gas Federation, while I was not there as an elected official, I still think that it would be poignant to bring some of the learnings that I had there back to this table. There was a great presentation by the Canadian Gas Association regarding energy in general, and they did a full outlook on all different kinds of energies, going back to the 1800s, where it started with biomass and moving up into now the very elaborate forms of energy we have now. And it really showed that we've never really deleted any form of energy. In fact, we just keep adding new forms, and we need to continue to do that and never remove a form of energy, just keep finding new, better, more efficient ways to deliver all of the different forms. The quote that he used is, "I bet when they discovered coal, they thought that coal would put those biomass guys out of business," and that surely has not happened, and they probably felt the same way when they found natural gas, that they'd put the oil guys and the coal guys and the biomass guys out of business, and that's not the case. It really, you need all the forms working together. It was a great presentation, and MLA Getson did a fabulous one on economic corridors and how integral they are for the entire world's economy, and how we need to utilize our east to west corridors better and our north to south corridors better. They need to be developed and utilized on both directions. I was at Ag Service Board as well, and it's always a pleasure, and congratulations to Jim Duncan for being elected chairman for another year, and Deb Skeels for being elected as vice chairman. I was at amalgamation and the budget, of course, as well. And health engagement, the Yellowhead hack went over fall prevention, healthy aging in place, and trying to create dementia-friendly communities. And our own health engagement team has holiday appreciation gifts well underway. And we have expanded our ability to present those as well. We include physicians, healthcare aides at all of the long-term care facilities. That's a new one this year. We had not included them previously, but we have included them this year, the hospital and EMS. And I believe the Heart of Healthcare Award is up for nominations. That is like our local award. So we'd be looking, if you go to the Chamber website, they'll be taking nominations through their website. If you want to nominate a healthcare worker that you feel is truly the heart of their operation, we would love to get those nominations. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Reeve Melhoff? Moving on, Councillor Northcott.
Ready? Yeah, there was budget and all that's, was also attendance in there. Aside from all that, I attended a SPOG meeting. One of the major topics that we discussed there was methane emissions monitoring. I attended a Caroline Library board meeting just last night. They were successful in receiving a $3,500 grant from TC Energy. So congratulations for Amanda and Allison for putting their work and their time forward for that grant. And for the Caroline School, there was Mr. North, the janitor that had served there for decades, has decided to retire after decades of service, a very essential, valuable service to society. So hope he enjoys retirement. But on the other side of that, it also leaves an opportunity for some janitorial positions for any residents that might be interested in casual or permanent positions at the Caroline School. If they could reach out and contact Wild Rose School Division, there's a couple opportunities there for a janitorial position. And that's my council report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Northcott? Okay, moving on to Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you. We have been very busy, and I participated with the rest of council in most of that. That's covered. I don't need to go on with that. I also attended the Nordegg Community Association. Always nice to go out and see what's happening new in Nordegg. I recently had to renew my passport, and there was a land acknowledgement in the, this is something that we've talked about a bit, in their building that I really liked. I just wanted to share. It says that the Government of Canada respects the traditional Indigenous territories on which we gather and acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 and 7 territories, as well as a traditional Métis gathering place. We thank the First Nations and Métis people for their stewardship of this land and ask the Creator for continued blessings for the people who gather on this land and future generations. If we're going to proceed on something like that, this is a great model. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Ratcliffe? Moving on to Councillor Surma.
Boy, everybody's report is short and sweet. I also was involved in the budget and strategic planning and all of that. I found it very enlightening, to say the least. And Jordan and myself, Councillor Northcott and myself, went to SPOG meeting in Brooks on November 30th. And SPOG is really getting involved in the carbon credits for the oil companies that are with SPOG. That maybe we can reduce the amount that they pay through carbon credits that they do. They're hoping to be kind of the middleman in between. It's just a process that has just started to get on there in their line of vision. They were just talking about it at the meeting. They seem pretty excited about it, and I'm pretty excited about it because there's millions of dollars worth of credits that bounce around Canada, and if our oil companies can be a part of it, that's nothing but a great thing. And I would like to commend Councillor Northcott on taking on the Treasurer's report, the Treasurer's position for SPOG this year. I think that takes, with all his work that he does as a councillor and in business, to take on that role. I thought that was pretty amazing, and thank you for stepping forward. I think it was great. The other thing with the amalgamation meetings that I attended, I think they went well, but I think we, and I mean both councils, need to remember to be a little more open and honest of what we're delivering in those meetings. Enough said about that. I was watching Global this morning and I was amazed at how bloody stupid our federal government is. Did anybody listen to Global this morning? The federal government wants our cows to quit burping methane gas, and they're looking into ways of stopping this. I couldn't believe it. The number of cows that we had in Alberta or in Canada, at the peak numbers we had 3 million more buffalo than we've ever had cows. And they're worried about burping methane gas. Do they not have anything better to do than talk about cows burping gas? I was just flabbergasted, and I hope somebody has a question for me, because I can't believe anybody being that stupid.
Okay.
And you can't fix stupid. Oh.
Needless to say that the ride over was a lot of self-talk. All right, any question? Okay, questions for Councillor Cermak? I see blinking lights. Let's go with Councillor Lougheed.
Thank you, and that's the exact reason I was trying to convert my cows into electric power. We won't go there. But anyway, I would ask, I think maybe my hearing is bad, but did you say you went to Brooks for the SPOG meeting?
Sorry, I should have said Olds.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
All
Yes.
right. Very good. Deputy Reeve Beloff.
Thank you, Reeve. Is there a legislation change or a policy change being suggested to support some type of measuring system? Or I'm just trying to grab a hold of something that the Ag Service Board can potentially champion against this methane cow issue.
It sounded like to me, and it was just on the stuff at the bottom that goes across, that they're looking into what they can do to eliminate methane gas from burping cows. So that's another way the federal government looks like they're trying to hit Alberta, because they say they want us to reduce our oil and gas emissions by reducing the amount that we produce. So are they trying to reduce the amount of cows that we have in Alberta?
My question was merely to bring us back to some type of action item we as a council can pursue with that information. Sorry.
That might be a suggestion then to RMA to advocate on our behalf. So for all of rural Alberta. Anyways, Councillor Ratcliffe.
We need grants, or maybe Weights and Measures is going to come around and do measurements to see just what. But on a more serious note, I do know that some research has been done in feedlots where adding a small amount of carbon to the feed does reduce the amount of methane emissions from the herd.
So more costs gotta go in to reduce cows so they don't give out methane gas, so the price of beef goes up again.
And the farmers starve.
Yep.
There you go.
Great way of thinking.
Councillor Northcott.
All right. I did attend, on the discussion of cattle. I did attend in Caroline. There was a presenter. He did a really good job at the Greywood Fords Association. And really, it actually wasn't the cows. It's really not the cows emitting methane, but the grasses. They will, grasses and vegetation absorb carbon from the environment. The cows eat them, eat the grass, and then it's emitted. So whether that carbon or methane was going to be emitted, the way he'd explained it, was going to be emitted either through the decomposing of the grasses or the vegetation, or if there was a fire that would go through, then that methane or that carbon would be emitted. So it's actually not really wasn't really the cow at all. That carbon or methane was going to be emitted through the decomposing or burning of the vegetation.
There you go.
But it was the federal government said that it was the cows this morning.
There's lots more items.
Because they're burping. And that's how it was worded.
She's very, very interesting, very interesting. That's the political landscape that we live in. Councillor Graham?
Councillor Cermak, your report is my favorite. And I was actually watching a video yesterday, and it was like an aerial of a city. And then it obviously was sparked by this. This video was made, and then it went out to some people working their cattle, and they were like, "Yeah, we're definitely the problem out here compared to the city." But it's, you know, I feel guilty for those 2 o'clock in the morning times that I was chasing my cows around the pen because they were bloated and making them release their gases. I was killing the environment apparently. But I was just curious if they mentioned in the news what type of private jets they flew out here on.
That's fair, that's fair. There you go.
So when I read it, I even had to get my wife up and have her read it. I said, honey, am I really reading this right? And it said the federal government.
There you go. All right, I'm just gonna keep carrying on because we're looking at the clock here. So my council report is on the 29th, CBC Radio reached out and wanted a short conversation in regards to the rail trail. That was a presentation in November. So anyways, I invited the reporter to come out and said that we would gladly have tourism operator give them a tour or have council show him the rail trail. On the 30th, I attended the Beacon of Hope evening and silent auction in regards to the Central Pregnancy Center. Was very well attended. I think there was about 200 people, 220 people involved. It was a great evening. The desserts were, of course, right up there. That was the whole highlight, desserts and coffee, so that was great. Attended with you guys all last week. Guess we did four straight days in these seats, and it was nice to get up and walk around all weekend, and went and I got myself my Christmas tree, so that worked out good. I had also a ASHA board meeting on the Friday. There is a conference coming up in March, an AGM nominations for president and members at large that are coming up. So I'll fill in Council Moore at our next meeting, which will be on February 9th. Other than that, I think we're all up to date with all our councilor reports. I'm looking for a motion to accept. Councilor Lougheed, I will call the question. All those in favor? Carried. All right, we have council remuneration. Many pages. Thank you all for bringing it up to date. We just have our December ones to fill in and submit here shortly. Any questions? If not, looking for a motion to accept the councilor remuneration. Deputy Reeve Melhoff, all those in favor? Carried. Correspondence. We have a letter from Minister Drishan. Any questions or comments on that item? If not, looking for a motion to accept correspondence. Councillor Cermak. All those in favor? Carried. Notices of motion. Anyone notices a motion? We had a great discussion about that earlier. And we don't have a closed session today. And so that just brings us along the line to item number 12, which is adjournment.
Okay, I'll make that.
Okay, Councillor Northcutt makes the notice to adjourn. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. See you next week at our special meeting on the 19th.